a brother on TikTok who goes by the name Bofa Deez just made a bold statement announcing that he's cutting ties with any white friends who voted for Trump, specifically in light of Trump's elimination of the Equal Employment Opportunity Act. First, let's hear what Bofa Deez had to say.
Donald Trump has officially revoked Executive Order 11246, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Executive Order signed by LBJ in 1965. This was a bedrock policy that had ensured equal hiring practices in the federal government for decades. LBJ's order gave the Secretary of the Labor the authority to ensure equal opportunity for people of color and women in federal contractors' recruitment, hiring, training, and other employment practices. It required federal contractors to refrain from employment discrimination and take affirmative action to ensure equal opportunity based on race, color, religion, and national origin.
I'm going to be very short and very to the point. To the white people watching this, and especially to the white people that know me in the real world, my friends, okay? Today, Trump did away with the Equal Employment Opportunity Act. You know the history of that, and you know why it had to be implemented in the first place. So when you went in that booth, if you cast your vote for Donald Trump, we're done. If you didn't hear me the other times I've said it, I just want to reiterate it now. You cannot vote for somebody that takes away the Equal Employment Opportunity Act, knowing the history behind it and why it had to be put in place. You can't cast your vote for him and look at me and tell me that you love me. You're done. And I mean that for life. Unfucking believable. They try to paint it as this saving grace for civil rights when really they just want to fill the federal government with all of their selected employees that are loyalists no matter what. So even after the 4 years that Donald Trump is done, even if another MAGA loyalist or Republican takes the presidency, they still have to go through all of this bullshit because now you got only MAGA federal employees. No diversity, no inclusion. Talking about some fucking based off merit. We know what it has to be based off. Did you bend the knee to Donald Trump? Cool. You now have a job in the federal government. We fired everybody else. You knew what you were voting for. Donald Trump knows he cannot run again. If you think they're doing all this shit just to disappear in 4 years, they're setting it up for the long game. They're setting it up for the fucking long game. So now if I go in and I want to get a loan for a home, if I want to get a business loan, I guarantee you it's going to be so much easier for the white man who they love and select to get a loan than it is for me to start my business. Fast forward into the next generation, my bloodline is now affected because I couldn't start my business as soon as this guy could because he's white and he got the loan. It's an example, but do you see how shit like this affects generation after generation after generation? We get robbed of opportunities because of your selfish ass vote. Did he sign an executive order for price gouging? Did he sign a fucking executive order for these grocery stores to stop looking at you with no fucking money and increasing the prices anyway? That's what he told y'all. Where's the executive order for that? Oh, well, it's a process and it's complicated. It can't, excuses. Like it always fucking is from y'all. Done, dude. Out my fucking face, man. Think about how big of a fucking pussy you have to be, man. You don't want anybody criticizing you or speaking out against your ideology, so you try to suppress the flow of information and social media because you're a strong leader, but you can't take fucking criticism. And then on top of that, when you lose or when your people lose, you blame it on fucking DEI and the corrupt government. Because the guy who you fucking lost to is not fucking white, but he's also more qualified than you. You can't fucking wrap your head around that. You have fucking terminal, incurable hatred in your heart. And it's genuinely not until recently I had to accept that even those type of people can fucking exist. I cannot control your existence, but I can control your access to my fucking life, bro. Out of here.
The passion and frustration in this brother's voice are clear and they're valid. Let's break this down. Trump's actions, specifically dismantling the Equal Employment Opportunity Act, are nothing short of an attack on civil rights and equity. Historically, the Equal Employment Opportunity Act was critical to combating workplace discrimination. This act was tied closely to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. By dismantling these safeguards, Trump has essentially opened the door for discrimination to flourish, especially in federal employment and contracts. Let's be clear, this isn't just about political games. This is about eroding the protections that allowed Black Americans and other marginalized groups to compete on an even playing field. It's a step toward reinstating systemic barriers that kept us out of opportunity for generations. When Brother Bofa Deez talks about how this impacts things like business loans, home loans, and generational wealth, he's hitting on something profound. According to a 2023 report by the Economic Policy Institute, Black Americans face persistent wage gaps. On average, Black workers earn 73 cents for every dollar a white worker makes for doing the same job. Without affirmative action policies, this gap widens as discriminatory hiring practices take hold. In 2022, the Federal Reserve reported that Black applicants were twice as likely to be denied home loans compared to white applicants, even when controlling for income and credit score. With fewer Black federal employees and contractors, key entry points for middle-class stability, those disparities will deepen. Trump's framing of this move as merit-based hiring is a deliberate distraction. Historically, merit has been weaponized to justify exclusion, or in reality, merit becomes synonymous with who fits the mold of the majority rather than actual qualifications. Let's go back to why these laws were necessary in the first place. During the Jim Crow era, Black Americans were explicitly excluded from opportunities in education, housing, and employment. Even after the Civil Rights Act, systemic racism persisted. Affirmative action was designed to address these disparities by mandating that employers and institutions actively consider diversity and inclusion. By removing these safeguards, Trump has set the clock back to a time when corporations and government entities could legally exclude us without consequences. The effects will ripple into future generations, impacting our children and grandchildren. Social media is buzzing about this topic, and many in the comments are echoing the sentiment of cutting off people who support policies like this. One commenter on TikTok wrote, "If you can vote for someone who actively takes food off my family's table, you don't love me, period." And another said, "This isn't just politics, this is survival for us. It's personal." This frustration is valid and it reflects a broader awakening in the Black community. We can't afford to keep relationships with people who are complicit in our oppression. However, some voices in the comments are urging us to move beyond simply cutting ties and instead focus on building up our own institutions. The elimination of the Equal Employment Opportunity Act is a stark reminder that the systems in place are not designed to protect us. So, what does this mean for us as a community? We need to prioritize building and supporting Black-owned businesses. The fewer barriers we face to employment and wealth creation, the more control we have over our future. If we've learned anything, it's that voting matters. Policies like this are proof that who we elect impacts our day-to-day lives. We must hold our leaders accountable and demand protections for marginalized communities. We can't rely on others to teach us or give us opportunities. It's time to double down on educating ourselves and the next generation about financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and community building. Brother Bofa Deez's frustration is understandable, but we also need to ensure that our frustration doesn't lead to isolation. While cutting off harmful relationships is necessary, we must also focus on strengthening bonds within our own community. While it's essential to hold others accountable, we need to look inward and ask, are we doing everything we can to protect and uplift ourselves? We must be strategic. Anger without action gets us nowhere. We need to channel our frustration into strategic moves, supporting candidates, building coalitions, and organizing protests when necessary. Invest in our future. We can't always depend on federal policies to protect us. Building independent financial and educational systems within our community is critical. Stop the division. We must not let outside forces divide us. Whether it's debates over class, gender, or religion within the Black community, unity is our strongest weapon against systemic oppression. Brother Bofa Deez's message is more than just a personal decision. It's a call to action for all of us. This is about more than politics. It's about survival and generational progress. We cannot afford to ignore these attacks on our rights, and we cannot afford to stay silent. The elimination of the Equal Employment Opportunity Act is a reminder that progress can be undone if we're not vigilant. Let's learn from this moment and work together to build a future where our rights and opportunities are untouchable. Stay informed, stay united, and stay strong.